It's the first episode of Vampire Pitches. Every time we do one of these episodes, we're going to pitch an idea for a movie or streaming show about vampires that doesn't actually exist. And for this first episode, to do this, I have gathered together a group of friends from across the entertainment industry, all of whom I would like to introduce you to right now. So let's go one at a time and ask each one of you who you are. Just tell us a little bit about yourselves, and let's start with Kelsey.
Hi, my name is Kelsey Walmer. I am an actor, voice artist, model, and I was that annoying hipster friend that saw What We Do in the Shadows in theaters during its first run and told all of their friends they have to go see this right now, and it took people 4 years to believe me.
Excellent. Tom, tell us about yourself.
My name is Thom Newell. I'm a filmmaker. Primarily, I am an editor, and I'm also a bit of a horror junkie. So if we're talking about vampires specifically, I think one of the things that I've been very attracted to in vampire storytelling and mythology is the tragic nature of the creatures, specifically when they struggle with the price that must be paid for an immortal life.
Excellent. Excellent. Allison.
Hi, I'm Alison Veneto. I work in video games. My favorite thing about vampires is the clothes.
Excellent. And Jack, finish us out.
Hi there, I'm Jack Conway. I'm a digital producer. I work in esports currently, and I've also worked in a lot of digital media for YouTube, Facebook Live, whatever was popular in that particular time. I also like the clothes of vampires. They're dapper, and that makes them the best of all monsters.
All right. All right. Excellent. Well, so that is our group of pitchers for this evening. And what are we going to be pitching? We're going to be pitching a sequel to the hit 1980s vampire movie, The Lost Boys. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wait, aren't there already 2 sequels to The Lost Boys? Why, yes, there are. Both of them starring Corey Feldman, who returned to the role that he immortalized in the first movie of Edgar Frog, the vampire hunter. But both of those movies went straight to DVD. And originally, based on the success of The Lost Boys in theaters, there was a theatrical sequel that was planned and was in development for quite a while. And the title of that film was The Lost Girls. Now, that movie has since died, and we'll never see it now. And any of the details of what it might have been tragically went away when we lost Joel Schumacher a couple of weeks ago. So RIP to Joel. So this is basically an academic exercise in what could have been. Now, having said that, I should also say that none of us actually own the rights to The Lost Boys. These pitches are not going to be made into actual movies. This is just sort of a fun activity to do as sort of like an Elseworlds what could have been type of situation. So, having said all that, we're going to do each pitch roughly 2 minutes, as though we were in an elevator with a movie executive who has a lot of money to throw at a project. So, I think based on costuming and decor, we should probably start with Kelsey. Do you mind going first?
Not at all. Okay.
All right.
So my movie, I'm going to change the title up a little bit. It's called Lost Girls, The Wendys. Now, our... already did, knocking it out of the park. Now, our story follows, it's going to be in the vein of the original film for tone. Story follows a father and his 2 daughters, ages 18 and 12, moving back to his hometown of Santa Carla after the sudden death of his wife, the girl's mother. They move in with his sister, who is taking over the role of the grandfather, of being the local eccentric and taxidermy enthusiast. Now, I'm going to be taking a note out of the Ghostbusters reboot in that this movie will prominently feature Chris Hemsworth playing the dad, the local nut played by Kate McKinnon, and Leslie Jones. We'll get to her very shortly. Now, immediately after Getting to Santa Carla, the kids head to the Santa Cruz Cursed Pier. I call it the Cursed Pier because weird shit goes down in there. In Lost Boys 1, Us, Killer Clowns from Outer Space, it is a cursed location as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, wow.
There's going to be a summer concert series where, of course, we'll have a prominently featured cameo by Tim Capello, aka Greased Up Saxophone Man. Now, at the pier, that is where we meet the Wendys, a reckless gang of teenage biker girls who seem trapped in the 80s and like to cause chaos around town. So, fun fact from Lost Boys 1, Max is loosely based upon Peter Pan. He never wants to grow up. Obviously, his boy gang that he keeps around is called the Lost Boys, and he's constantly looking for a wife/girlfriend/mother, a Wendy figure from the famous fairy tale, but also what he finds in Lucy, who's a little bit of a bride of Dracula also. So playing upon that idea, before Lucy came along, Max had been trying to find his Wendy, had converted many girls, but none of them stuck. These girls were obviously trapped in his house, and upon Max's death, they were set free from their bindings to Max and are let loose upon this town. Now, these failed bride conversions have basically been living as a dangerous pack of leather-clad Madonnas for the last 30 years, just terrorizing the town. The oldest daughter, obviously seeing that these are the most interesting people in this little tiny town, decides to hang out with them. Meanwhile, Dad Chris Hemsworth gets a job at a local bakery run by Wesley Snipes. His youngest daughter begins hanging... Thank you. His youngest daughter begins hanging out with him. Well, his daughter begins hanging out with him at work, where we're introduced to Leslie Jones's character. I told you she'd come back up, who is Wesley Snipes' wife and a vampire hunter. She's literally female Blade. Now, she began working to eradicate the vampires since Max's downfall. Slowly, the daughter begins getting hazed into the female biker gang group. I would like to play up the danger of it. I think that's one of the iconic things about the film is all of those stunts the boys put him through are actually terrifying. So playing upon that, she is going to be hazed into the group. Eventually, she brings the girls home with her one day, where we realize that these are girls that Chris Hemsworth's character went to high school with. His former late wife was his high school sweetheart and had been friends with these girls. The leader of the Wendys had tried to win him away from his wife. There was a falling out between the girls. They never spoke to each other again, and no one knew what happened to each other. The leader of the Wendys, seeing this as her chance to get back her high school crush, decides she must now eliminate his daughters and win back Chris as her eternal partner. The girls team up with Leslie Jones, of course, playing the Van Helsing character, and in another twist, in the middle of the final battle, as all chaos is breaking loose in the house, the sister Kate McKinnon bursts through the wall in full werewolf mode, and the battle will end with Kate McKinnon as still a werewolf saying, "Well, now that we've gotten rid of those vampires, it's time to go on to the zombies," just like the grandfather's iconic line.
Excellent. That is fantastic.
Thank you.
Well done. Well done. Oh my God, I just green light. I have no questions.
Make it.
That's awesome. So my question is, I love the fact that the Wendys they have a history with Chris Hemsworth.
Mm-hmm.
Are the Wendys, like, did they stop aging when they got bit? Is this a situation where, like, there's a young 18-year-old girl who's trying to win back Chris Hemsworth from his wife who is in her 40s?
Yes. So the idea was that when you are transformed, you are frozen in time, both in age, much like in what we see in most vampire things, as well as in your sensibility. I really like the idea of playing upon, Chris Hemsworth is going back to his hometown, and these are all people that they kind of symbolize people who never left their hometown. They stayed in their little podunk town, never changed their ways. So while they're physically 18, they're in their 40s like him because they've been there the whole time. But they have never given up on kind of being these petty high school bitches. So they were transformed at 18. Who knows how they will look into how they came to be involved with Max or no Max. I had the idea that they were all girls who had worked at his his video store at one point or another, and he kept transforming them, thinking, oh, this will work, they'll be the same age as my sons. Realized that never worked and went, I need a partner who's my age. And that's when Lucy came into the picture.
Interesting. What do you guys think? Do our other executives have? Yes, Allison, go for it.
So are they dressed and listening to music that is like 30 years old?
Absolutely. Full 80s class, because you have to have the 80s in Lost Boys. Lost Boys works because of the 80s.
I love it. So she moves into the daughter moves into this town and just sees like these girls her age who are all dressed like the 80s and listening to the 80s all the time.
Yep. And we're in this hipster throwback thing. There's Instagram people that are doing this. She's like, you guys seem different. Everyone's kind of suburban. She's like, you guys seem fun, edgelord. Let's go talk to you.
Any other questions for Kelsey before we move on?
Take your pitch and just repeat it when it's my turn?
Good question. Very good question. Let's go ahead and move on to Thom then. I'm curious.
Oh man, I don't want to follow that one. Okay, here we go. So I'm looking at this as a reboot. I think it should be a true blue reboot of the original film, The Lost Girls, being playing into it. As such, I think it should be separated from the original film in as many ways as possible, still calling back here and there. But the first way that my version would be different than Schumacher's original is that it would actually be good.
Oh!
Police, I'd like to report shots fired.
John, I told you I had some incendiary shit.
I didn't know that's what it was going to be.
I hate
Oh my
Paused to sip tea after that. He paused.
Oh no, don't
I'll
worry.
bet that's in the pitch. I'll bet it's in brackets. It says pause to sip tea.
Yeah, right. Okay, so I hope that didn't cut into my 2 minutes too much. But so when I develop an idea, outside of the initial story or hook, the thing that I focus my time on the most at the beginning is the commentary, the social commentary. I believe horror and genre storytelling is at its best when speaking about society at large through the lens of fantasy. For this story, I would want to focus on a broken or non-traditional family, similar to the original, where we have a single mother and her teenage daughter moving to a new town to start over. I would want the commentary of this film to focus on the ideas present in transhumanism, with that being an overarching subject, but it includes genetic manipulation, population control, the ability to affect the potential of the human body through science, especially before one's birth. I think the great transhumanist film is probably Gattaca, if you guys ever saw that.
Sure.
Great movie.
So I would stand by the development of this feature film, including our main actor, who would need to be a woman who lives with some sort of physical disability. And that person and her experience would inform the complications that the character on screen would be dealing with. As an example, let's say our actor is wheelchair bound, so then our character would be as well. This young character would fall in league with a group of women who take our main character under their wing. After a time, she would become privy to their identity as a coven of vampires, on the lookout for their newest member. They would entice her to commit small transgressions and move up to criminal actions, all with the promise of turning her into a vampire, which would heal any ailments that her body has ever experienced. Our journey would be to follow her as she decides how far she's willing to go to have the physical experience of life of an average teenager. And remember, the ultimate price being paid here is that as a vampire, she would commit to murdering at least one human being every night of her life. So throughout the film, her mother would be her biggest champion, and her mother will be ignorant of the vampires and their plans. Each of our supporting vampire characters would also have backstories of imperfect mortal lives that were healed by the syndrome that is being a child of the night. Our mother character would ultimately find out about the coven, and they would present her as the initial victim for our main character on the night of her turning. Mm. And her final decision to become a vampire or not would be to choose between her mother's life or the life she's always dreamed of. That's it. That's my 2-minute pitch.
Great.
Yeah. Wow. That is really heavy. That is a total.
Can you tell I've been reading Anne Rice for the last 3 months?
Nice. But also, I mean, I like the rip from the headlines feel of it too. Like that all seems like something you read about on your phone and be like, oh, that's the thing they're doing, I guess.
No, I mean, like I said at the beginning, the thing that interests me about vampires the most is like the price that they have to pay, right? Like coming to terms with that immortal life. And, you know, I think the great example is Louis from Interview with the Vampire, where he just hates killing people, but he doesn't want to die. So what are you gonna do, right? So,
you know, I think my favorite part about this is the fact that that your main character has an objective. Like there's something that she desperately wants.
mm-hmm.
Like, you know, for the original movie is sort of like all these events kind of happen to a family. Like the family is like, we need a fresh start. None of them want to be there, but they're just in this situation, and then vampires attack. Mm-hmm. Whereas in your story, it's the main character wants to walk, and that is an incredible carrot to hold over somebody's head in order to get them to become part of the lifestyle that you want them indoctrinated in.
Yeah,
so,
for real, yeah. That's I like that you like that, Sean.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's great, and it's a very nice, like very simple core thing to just sort of hang the whole movie on. Like you can put that in a trailer and everybody would be like, oh yeah, I know what this is. Can your vampires fly?
I don't give a shit. I've seen The Lost Boys a grand total of one time, and that was one time too many.
Wow. And how old were you when you saw it?
In college, so 18, 19, 20, something like that.
Gotcha.
Old enough to know that Schumacher was not as good of a director as I thought he was.
Whoa. Okay.
Wow.
Well,
don't speak ill of dead my ass.
All right. Well, I feel like there's a lot to unpack there, but that's a conversation for another time, I think.
He's done plenty of good work, guys. Plenty of good stuff.
But before we run away to the next pitch, was there a Joel Schumacher film that you did like?
Yeah, I love A Time to Kill. The Client is pretty decent. As a kid, I loved Batman Forever and Batman Robin. So like even when I watch them today, I acknowledge that they're trashy or whatever, but like they're glorious versions of that. So certainly not my favorite or anything, but like loved them as a kid. And I think Phone Booth is like actually like really intense and cool and fun. So, you know, I don't know. I remember liking Phantom of the Opera, but I only liked it enough to watch it once. So whatever that means. I mean, and, you know, Peak TV, he was a big Peak TV director. He, you know, helped develop, or not develop, but like he had big influence on House of Cards and all that stuff. So, you know, guy had a great career. Yeah, he directed a bunch of House of Cards and other Peak TV shows. But yeah, so, you know, I don't think that he was some like hack director. He had a very specific way of telling his stories that on some of them really work. But some of them I didn't for me. So that's it. Okay.
Interesting. The Lost Boys falls in that category. All right. Well.
Yeah, which is weird, right? Because The Lost Boys seems like it's totally me. Totally.
Color me surprised. That was great, though. Thank you, Thom. Do any of our other executives have any questions or comments?
There's a lot of science. Are some of the vampires still going to be wearing sexy clothes?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, then.
Just
what's it look like on a
shots.
T-shirt? Show it to me on a T-shirt, then I'll know.
And sell shirts with Hot Topic.
Yes. What's that as a Funko? Pitch it to me as a Funko.
If that's the future of pitching, where it's just like expected that you come in with a Funko to show of like
your customized Funkos.
That's amazing.
I absolutely want a Funko of Kelsey right now, by the way, like a current Kelsey Funko would buy. Part of the pitch.
I would like to try to put transhumanism like on a T-shirt.
Yeah.
No. Challenge unaccepted. Way too complicated. It's great. It's great for conversations at Thanksgiving with the fam, but not on a T-shirt.
I bet. All right. Well, Allison, since you have the goblet of blood, let's move on to you.
It's just refreshing myself here for this pitch.
Excellent.
All right. Everybody, I've got 2 words. Vampire Rumspringa. Let me explain.
I think
Green
they
light,
just
green
killed
light, green
Jack.
light, green light, ding, 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 green light.
So, in the first film, Santa Carla was the murder capital of the world. That was because of vampires. Nobody really knew that yet, but they all know it now. So, the town of Santa Carla has come to an understanding with the remaining vampires. You may recall that the Lost Boys hung out in the sunken resort that Kelsey is now residing in.
Vanna White.
And, they say in the movie it was like the hottest hotel 85 years ago or whatever. So they have brought back the resort, and they've turned it into a luxury spa that the vampires live and work at, where tourists come to be fed on by vampires voluntarily. It's been featured on Goop. It's supposed to be really good for all kinds of ailments, to spend a lot of money to come to this luxury vampire spa. And so the hotel is currently run by Star, played by Jamie Gertz in the first film.
Oh, yay!
Got to give that girl some work. She's fantastic.
That's excellent.
And so, she did not become a vampire, so she has aged. And she is basically that mother to the Lost Boys and Girls that they wanted Diane Weiss to be, because she takes care of the resort, keeps peace with the town, to make sure everything is working well. So you may recall in the original film that Star and Michael, played by Jason Patric, sort of start to become vampires, and then if they don't feed, they're going to die, but they manage to not ever become vampires. But what interested me is this state of half vampirism, where they have all the strength and the power and the abilities and the sexuality of being a vampire, but if they don't feed, they don't actually become a vampire. So after the events of the first film, Star and Michael stay together, but he tragically dies 2 years later of cancer. And she's like, okay, actually, I sort of regret that we didn't become vampires and live forever together, and wants to give other people the opportunity to make that decision. So they create a serum that allows you to experience the state of half vampirism that automatically wears off after 3 months if you don't feed. And so you get the chance to experience vampirism and decide whether or not you want to be a vampire. And they only give this opportunity to the teenagers of Santa Carla, who are coming to work to the resort each summer. So this is Vampire Rumspringa. If you're unfamiliar with the concept of Rumspringa, it's the Amish tradition where you leave the Amish community and you experience the rest of the world, and then you have to decide whether you want to come back to the Amish community or not. So all the teenagers show up at the resort, and they get vampire serum, and they have powers, and they have parties. Saxophone Man definitely comes back. And also, at the end of the 3 months, it wears off, but it also makes you, if you don't become a vampire, it makes you immune to vampirism. So you've been inoculated to vampirism. You can live in Santa Carla for the rest of your life without being super concerned. So the story is about 2 sisters who are in high school. They both go to work at the resort. They make a promise that they're either both going to turn or not going to turn. And they have all the fun, teenager crazy fun times. But the younger sister ends up falling in love, and she's trying to decide with this guy whether they want to be young and in love forever or if they want to grow old together. And the older sister becomes part of the vampire police. So Star has to make sure that the rules are kept with the town of Santa Carla. So anytime any vampires disobey the rules, feed off of people who are not volunteering at the resort, she has to keep that in check. So this girl sort of becomes part of that team with her vampire powers, and there's a subplot of an errant vampire crew who are feeding on people without their consent. This movie is kind of about consent.
Okay.
So, at the end of the movie, did the 2 sisters choose to become vampires? They choose to be going back to humans. Explaining their entire character arcs would take me way longer than this amount of time, so you would just have to watch this theoretical movie to find out what happens.
That's excellent.
Very
All
nice.
right.
Very nice.
That's
Lots
cool.
Lots of throwbacks.
Yeah.
Whereas Tom's had the transhumanist, kind of angle. This has almost kind of a pharmaceutical sort of angle to it. Yeah, that's super cool. I am 100% in favor of a movie just starring Star. Like, following her character would be fabulous.
And I like that she's basically had to have gotten like a PhD in biochemistry and created a vampire serum that only she owns.
The idea that she went to school with the lady that had the serum and death becomes her.
Yes.
Yes.
And death becomes her is like
Yes.
just barely scraping by in class.
And the Reanimator, it's like all the same school.
The sequel to the sequel is the crossover movie.
The sequel to the sequel. It's
Oh my God.
University of all of these people.
Yeah, there is a name for that. It's it's a Lovecraft name, but they all went to this. Reanimator went to an actual university that he was at. I can't remember the name of it right now. It's a Lovecraft word. Sorry.
Miskatonic.
Miskatonic. Thank you very much, because they make shirts. Put it on. Show it to me on a t-shirt.
I got
Show it
that.
to me on a shirt.
The shirt is already made.
I love your focus on that in between time, because you'll see movies where it's like, in that one scene in that classic movie he had a hat. I'd like a whole movie about how he got that hat. Like, I don't need that. But that the science of that in between part, you're right. Now that you're saying it out loud, I never really thought about it, is that you can just kind of like default back or not, and you get all the perks and very few drawbacks. Like, they could kind of be out in the day more. Like, why would you ever move over? But you also have that gnawing, there's a part of you that wants something that it can't have.
Sure.
So there's like almost an addiction angle, or like a, lying to yourself or whatever angle. But yeah, if you just stay the course, you get pretty much all the best stuff. But I guess it's probably easy to like fall off the wagon.
Yeah.
Also, hashtag defund the vampire police.
And the subtitle of this film be Vamp Springer.
Uh-huh.
Oh, that's good.
Okay. Man,
Yeah.
That's good. Kelsey, what do you got?
I was gonna say, I just love the way you put the two ideas in opposition, because it's either you can live at this exact one phase of your life for absolute forever. You'll never grow older. You'll never experience all the problems of aging and death and getting sick and all of that. But you are absolutely shackled to this exact moment in your life. You always have to be working at this place, because otherwise, if you become a murderer and start eating people, well, you're going to be toast. You have to work here forever. You have to have this life forever. You can only be here. You couldn't even really go on a day trip anywhere, because you need to be able to feed every single day. So it's that I can have this exact moment in time forever, or I can have a lifetime that has no finite amount. No, I don't know how long I'm going to be here. Is it a day more, or is it 50 years, 80 years? But I can do a million other things with that time. It does pose such an interesting, like, given that opportunity, red pill, blue pill, what is the more appealing long-term choice?
It's literally endless summer.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah, and
my final question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just my final question is my favorite movie about Rumspringa is the overlooked comedy Sex Drive with Seth Green. Will Seth Green be in your movie as an Amish person?
I think there's a lot of opportunity for Seth Green to be in this movie.
Thank you.
He's also in Bucky. I
Yeah,
think
no further questions. Thank you. But not on the vampire police. Sorry, Sean, I spoke over you. I apologize.
No, that's quite all right. I was just going to echo Kelsey's comment there, and just the fact that you've set up a basically an environment where all sorts of very interesting character stuff can be done. Because everybody's situation would kind of be different based on everything that happened to them up to the point where they go to that resort.
when I was thinking about it and adding the inoculation angle, I thought that was an interesting wrinkle, because it's like, you can only do this now. You cannot choose to become a vampire in 10 years because you're inoculated now.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's like, now or never.
Yeah. No, I think that's such a smart way to handle it, because it is, well, why wouldn't you just come every summer and I'm Superman for 3 months and then I go back to wherever? No, I think that's great. It's you have 3 months to decide. You have to 90-day fiance it, basically.
The original Last Boys, when you look it up on Wikipedia, it does say it's like a horror comedy.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of opportunity for the kind of people who would come to a vampire resort to be fed on purpose. Those people,
For sure.
Sean, would you go to a vampire resort and get fed on on purpose?
I mean, I feel like this isn't even a fair question. Like,
would Mary Frances let you?
That's a good question. Are there couples feedings?
Yes.
Like, could we do it together?
Yeah, like a
Like
couple massage.
Like the two massage.
Like a massage, yeah.
Love it.
Then yeah, totally. Excellent job, Allison. Jack, hit us with yours.
I guess it's down to me. Anytime you do a report or something and you're like, you listen to other people's, you're like, okay, still good. Okay. They didn't do the things I did. And that was like, yeah, that's 6 things from mine. Okay, crap. Okay. That's got to go now. That's got to go. Can't do that anymore. No, this is fantastic. I'm taking us back to Santa Carla because that is where the vampires are. As the first film was a journey of 2 young men finding not only their identities but their sexual identities in the world through these sexy vampire types or other or even just new friends. We follow our heroine Corey, preferably a person of color, who is coming from a small town, moving with her family. Now, Corey is not a self-insert author character. She's not a blank slate that's just kind of there and then people fall in love with her for no reason. Corey's actually really cool. Like, Corey's got her life together. She has 2 parents that care about her. They're a little aloof to all of her comings and goings, but they do their best, and she goes into school and makes friends pretty easily. But she kind of falls into old habits, too. And that's the thing, is that Corey is good at just kind of being likable and figuring out what people want to hear, and that's worked for her to now. And all the girls at school, there's no like horrible mean girls, and they're not like using her, but it just isn't clicking. There's just something not there for her. And so there in Santa Carla, where obviously there's tales of all kinds of crazy horrible things happening, she's got to go out and kind of find some things to do because it's just too easy for her. So in doing so, she comes across a group of girls who live sort of off to the side of the public areas. But unlike where a bunch of boys live in a dank dungeon cave because it's cool and no one will bug you, they have taken over a giant home and turned it into multiple different themes. It's basically a vampire princess house. You've got the really pink room with lots of curtains and big high arches and stones, and that's all like princess themed. You've got like the goth room. You've got the whole cottagecore section. You've got a Viking area. You've got the cute Kwai room. And all of the girls who live there in the Starry-Eyed house, it's called Starry-Eye House, excuse me, all the girls who live there sort of have like admittedly a hierarchy. They're not a gang per se. They're more just a group of friends that all live together of an unknown age, and led by Nova. And Nova meets our heroine Corey, and they really hit it off. And Corey immediately figures out that Nova is definitely kind of an alpha and that she kind of has certain expectations and she definitely has some power over these girls, but it really is a blast, like hanging out with them all. But they clearly have a little edge to them and their backstory is a little unclear. They also publicly broadcast most of what they do on the internet. They basically live in what's known as a gamer house right now, where you just have a whole bunch of people who are online and they all have their own little like channels and lives, and then they intersect sometimes. Obviously, they broadcast at night for the most part, but sometimes day, with those shutters are closed. And so some of these people are actually known as just being in this really cool scenario. People even come to visit them. People try to like add them on Insta and come be friends with them. And sometimes those people disappear. Namely, if you are local and you find out where they are and you follow this girl on Instagram, you think she's really hot, and then you DM her a dick pic, you're probably not going to be around tomorrow. Your body will be in the ocean at some point. So it's a group of vampire girls who are kind of figuring out who they are and what their lives are about. And sometimes they remove people, but sometimes they just take as much as they need and then let that person go. Think of it, if we may go to another film by the same director, it's Falling Down, but in the modern era, for the people who truly deserve to be taken out, let's say.
Gotcha.
And won't be missed in the whole, like, genetic moving forward. At one point, So pretty early on, Corey's pretty smart, and she figures out that like there's something very strange about them. They are not just cool; they're a little dangerous, and that they're probably vampires. And that's something that she has to decide if that's something she wants to report, or if that's something that she wants to be part of. But she's still kind of figuring it out. She's kind of Dana Scullying this and sticking with it to see where it's really going to land. There's science behind it. She's actually learning a lot from Nova. They're getting along really, really well. And at that point, Corey's realizing also that all of her perfect life that's gotten up to here, maybe this is what's missing, and not just a cool group of girls to hang out with. She's had that before, but maybe it's Nova, and maybe having a boyfriend isn't what she needed this whole time at all either. A lot of things are changing in Corey. Now, at this point, the problem is that Santa Carla wasn't always controlled by these girls. It was controlled by other people. And they find out about this house because they're not really hiding. And in one moment, we basically pan through the house to see where the girls have become a vampire in the Starry Eye house. And there's a bottle, a very familiar bottle from the first film, which is obviously a bottle of blood. And it has a big gold star on it. Unfortunately, Star couldn't fight her urges, and she went all the way. Now, we don't unfortunately have Jamie Gertz in this film. She's represented by her blood, which is the power that the girls receive. But what we have now in our third act is that we have to deal with, or actually second and third, we have to deal with the previous vampires of the previous clans of Santa Carla. Now, to a similar pitch, they all were so cool and dreamy in the 80s, and they absolutely still are. It's just that they're still in that, which is kitschy at times if you catch it in the right times, but they still have mullets. They've got a lot of piercings in not great places, and they just keep showing up. And it's really about territory, and that how dare these very public girls who are vampires, who are supposed to be hiding this curse, are just out in the world and trying to take over their town. So it really is old versus new. With old strategies working sometimes because it's just kind of quick and dirty and you just go and just hurt someone, versus new strategies of actually planning and knowing the layout of the house and figuring out how to actually set booby traps for vampires, as we saw somewhere in the first film in preparation. Old versus new. I think the real point of it is, by we get to the end, is that I think the best like teen empowerment female movie that I could think of as a white dude is The Craft. It's that you really find people that get it, and you take control of your situation, and you get power. Now, in all of those films of the 80s and 90s, you then had to be punished because women can't hold that power. That's bad. So you only get it for a minute, and then you've got to stop. That's not the case here. You are now in a pack of vampires. You're all ultimately powerful, and you figured out this entire town. By the end of this, when we have vanquished the villains, it turns out Nova may have gone a little too far to the edge. And Corey's going to have to decide whether Nova can stay or not. But at the end of it all, this is Vampire Town, and these girls are the vampires that run it. And as long as they're there, they're there. And now everyone knows in the vampire community that they're there and that they took out the 80s has-beens. And they're going to start coming for them. So Santa Carla is now and will always be a town of vampires. In fact, their sign slogan is, all the damn vampires.
Excellent. That is excellent. I just like the movie executive inside of me was like, oh, when you have like old tactics running up against new tactics, these girls who are on the internet all the time, do they use the internet to fight back against the 80s vampires? Yeah.
But I mean, once again, allow me, an old white male, to explain feminism in a movie to you. There's my pitch. Someone else please write it. please have women write and direct and actually make it good.
Not a
That's
movie
excellent.
already called Vampire Town.
Yeah, right. It sounds like it, but it sounds like there's Halloween Town. It's like the Disney.
Sound like the Disney Channel original movie version.
Yeah.
But based on Halloween Town, that might be great.
Mine, I have to remove mine from the running though. I do not have Greasy Sax Man, and that is an absolute oversight. I'm not being sarcastic.
It's technically not a Lost Boys movie without it.
Maybe he's like one of the guys who contacts them, and like his photo is like the classic like front seat of his truck with sunglasses on, looking down, just like, you girls are getting real uppity, and then like he like disappears, but he's like got the sax. We pan back to the saxophone in the back of his truck. It's like, oh no, he turned into that guy.
Oh. For him. What
Oh no! He's
Oh,
still got his
God.
weird chains. Nah, I don't like that. Take that out. Sorry, that's not fair. I'm like adding to my pitch when I'm done. Sorry.
I don't have a lot of very insightful things to say about being another old white guy, but I think it's one thing that I have found in vampire movies in general, up until just very recently, is that there has been a missing female element to it. The vampire women in just about everything that is on screen are always some kind of seductress that has to be slain, and they're never the one who wins in the end or has wants or goals or a personality or any character development or anything like this. And I just the thought of being able to immerse yourself in those characters for like an hour and a half is something that I would totally want to watch.
Yeah, you're right. Outside of like Kate Beckinsale, like, yeah. And by the way, full credit to my wife, because I was thinking through all the films that this is similar to in concept that Lost Boys is, and it's the male fantasy, right? It's like it's the concept of Lost Boys, and it's like they did it in Ninja Turtles. They've done it in so many movies where it's like you just get to go hang out with boys and no one bugs you, and you just like eat junk food. And I was like, what is the female version of that? I asked my wife, I'm like, if you could literally do like take all your teenage angst and hormones and like you get to do whatever you want. She's like, exactly what she described. She's like, I'd take all my friends and we have a big house and it'd all be themed and be princesses every day. But then hers even ended with like, and then there'd be another castle way down the way that was like boys that sometimes we went to like masquerade balls with. Like there's still that element of like, yeah, we want to get our freak on every once in a while, but like when we get to it. Like,
Excellent.
yeah.
I like
That
the
is fantastic.
idea of the generational conflict,
Huh?
but they all possibly look the same age. But
Yeah.
they,
But yeah, the boomers are like, yeah, they're like hunky boys. They're like the guy in the new Stranger Things. Like he's still technically a super hunk, but like he looks so 80s with his look.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
So any other questions or comments from our executives for Jack?
I can just see a tagline of like, "Who's gonna run Vampire Town?"
Not wrong. Not wrong.
That's excellent.
Have you
Yeah.
thought to any degree what I forget? Was it Nova was the leader of the clan?
Yes.
Have you thought about how she would be crossing the line when you said like near the end she may have crossed the line?
Thank you for asking that question. As the leader herself, she's had to like make a lot of sacrifices and kind of take on that Regina from Mean Girls. Isn't her name Regina? I think with that much leadership, I think she's had to sort of shift into that role almost begrudgingly. But now that everything could be taken from her and that she has to kind of fight a new threat that she hasn't had to deal with before, she sort of accidentally takes on some of their tactics. And so, as any sort of wartime battles, you have to realize that even if the enemy is real dirty, sometimes the smartest way is to do exactly what they're doing or worse. And it takes her to a place where Corey has to decide if Nova is the actual enemy because she's gone a little too far. I know that's vague, but I haven't thought that through yet.
Nova is such a vampire name, and I
H
like
on the end, by the way.
and I like the Corey throwback.
Mhm.
Can I be
Yes.
honest with you? Totally unintentional until I wrote it down. I had that for 2 days, and I wrote Corey. Like, before this call, I'm like, and the girl's name was Corey. Oh, yeah. I honestly, I swear to God, that was not intentional. I just thought it was because I wanted to kind of like, not necessarily masculine or feminine name. I was just going in the middle. Yeah.
Yeah. Under neutral name.
Yeah. Thank you. That's what I meant. Thank you.
That's awesome. I'm glad you brought that up, Allison. Okay, so I have one myself that I would like to pitch out there.
I didn't know that was going to happen.
Did I? Surprise!
I shouldn't be surprised, but I'm very excited.
Well, it's just like you guys are having so much fun doing this. I wanted to do one too. All right, so I'm just going to fanboy out all over the original movie, of course, and say that this is going to require a couple of actors to reprise their roles in this sequel. So this starts with the character of Michael, who is played by Jason Patric, is now in modern day a congressman for California. He represents in the House of Representatives and spends most of his life in Washington. And that includes his daughter, Emma, and she lives out there with him. And the beginning of the movie, they get a phone call saying that that Michael's mom, Lucy, who was played by Diane Wiest, has had a terrible stroke, and they're not sure how much time she has left. And so Michael, who has never, ever wanted to go back to Santa Carla, now needs to go back to Santa Carla to see his mom. And his daughter, this might be her last chance to see her mom as well. He has never wanted to take his daughter to Santa Carla because obviously it's dangerous, and he had a very bad experience there as a kid. So he decides, okay, well, I've got congressional level federal bodyguards who will be with me, and we'll just go for a couple days, and like that'll be it, and that'll be the maximum exposure that Emma gets to this horrible place that I can't stand. And so in the meantime, Emma is like, oh my God, what? We're going to California? This is going to be great. Like, I mean, I hate that grandma's is sick, but get me out of Washington and get me away from private school and all of these just pretentious kids who I'm constantly having to be around in school uniforms and everything. Let's go to California where there's the beach and there are going to be hot dudes and concerts with oily saxophone guys and all of these. And not only that, but her father has always spoken of Santa Carla as just being this horrible place where there's just nothing but weirdos and just like people hanging around doing bad stuff. And so she can't wait to go. And so they get there, and Santa Carla has been completely gentrified and is now this super boring place. There are lots of churches, and the Boardwalk amusement park is all just families and little kids. There are just people who are very nicely dressed instead of lots of posters on phone poles for missing children. It's all for like youth groups and stuff like that. And so she's just like, what the heck? But they just go straight to the hospital, pretty much. And so she's not even really, getting to leave and see the place or anything like that. So this image that she had in her mind is a complete bust. And Diane Wiest's character is not conscious, so there's not a whole lot going on. And Emma goes to the lobby. It's the middle of the night. It's completely boring. And there is a girl who is sitting on the other side of the lobby who's wearing a black leather jacket with a bunch of zippers and looks like the type of person that Emma was expecting to be all over the place, and strikes up a conversation with the girl. They really hit it off. And the girl is like, do you maybe want to just get out of here? And Emma is like, well, I've got this bodyguard who's following me all the time. And the girl, whose name is Angelique, says, I think we can ditch him. And so, meanwhile, as Michael is sitting there in his mother's room, her doctor finally comes on shift, comes in, and says, oh, hi, Michael. And Michael freezes because it's Kiefer Sutherland's voice, and he turns around, and it is David standing there wearing a lab coat with a stethoscope, aged appropriately for Kiefer Sutherland, and holy shit, it's actually him. Because at the end of the Lost Boys movie, and this was like fan theories have gone, of course I'm going to go to this place, but there have been fan theories about the fact that David at the end of the Lost Boys did not die as a vampire because his body remained behind and he wasn't stabbed with a wooden stake or anything. It was an antler. And so he didn't explode or melt or any of the things that the other vampires did. So there was an idea I read somewhere, and I don't know if this was actually going to happen, that Kiefer Sutherland was going to return for the sequel as having, survived. And so this is kind of my way now, 30 years later, to have Kiefer Sutherland return to the sequel. And, obviously Michael is like, get out of here, I can't believe you're still, and David is like, look, I have to thank you. You saved me. I've done something with my life now. And maybe I have this chance to kind of repay this to you by helping to save your mom. And Michael doesn't want to have anything to do with this. At about the time the bodyguard comes in, is like, Mr. Congressman, we lost your daughter. And so that's sort of where the movie kicks off into high gear. And obviously Emma is out on the town having the craziest night of her life as she is pursued by vampires. When the bodyguards finally catch up to her, they become vampire food very quickly. And it turns out that Angelique has a secret.
What is it?
That she's actually the daughter of one of the Frog Brothers. And she's not actually a vampire, but she is there to help protect Emma. And Michael has no idea about this, but the actual vampire coven in town of the actual Lost Girls are posing as an all-girl teenage youth group, which is the perfect cover in this new version of Santa Carla. And so they're the ones who you would least expect. And Angelique is the only she takes after her dad and her uncle and is bucking the system and being a rebel and all that sort of thing. Turns out that the whole thing has been orchestrated in order to get Congressman Michael to this spot because the leader of the Lost Girls wanted to get him in on the coven through his daughter because she has some ideas about government that she would like to implement. So it all ends up in this final big showdown in the hospital, as essentially you've got Michael and you've got Emma and Angelique and you've got the Frog Brothers, and they're all basically pulling back, fighting vampires as they're coming in. And David is actually helping them as a human who just has a lot of experience with vampires. And they're falling back to Lucy's hospital room. And at a certain point, David realizes that there's really only one thing he can do because the leader of the Lost Girls is this character named Charity, and she's just too powerful. They can't fight her. So David goes for his his last Hail Mary, which is a particular bottle that he always keeps locked in his desk that might be recognizable from the first movie as holding his vampire blood in it. And he drinks it just as, one of the vampires comes into his office to take him out and throws him against the wall. And he just turns around and has the eyes again and just says, "My turn." And then things ratchet up from there. And so I think the way it ends is probably in Lucy's room where Charity, the vampire coven leader, is there and is probably has Emma up by the throat and Michael in the other hand. And then Lucy, Diane Weist's character, pulls a crossbow up from under the bed covers and fires and shoots Charity, and has some quippy line at the end, much like in the first movie about the only thing that could get my son back here were all the damn vampires, or something like that. So that is my Lost Girls.
Very
Thank
nice.
you for listening.
Very nice.
Very fun.
So my
Very
question
nice.
is, are politicians the real vampires?
I think there is ample opportunity for at least humor in the movie revolving around that. Absolutely. David saying, which one of us actually turned out to be the vampire?
Oh.
Something like that. I don't know.
Huh?
Do any of the Lost Girls know who David is? Is there any history of him in that town? They know who he is?
That's a good question. Probably not.
Yeah.
I would imagine that they showed up once the power vacuum happened,
Mhm.
after Max was taken out. So, so I would imagine maybe they've heard I'm sure they've heard stories about the vampire coven that was there before, but no, I don't think any of them would recognize David.
I have follow-ups. I think we learned, and I know that you'll correct me on this. Tell me if I'm right or wrong. I think in the original movie we learned that crosses and garlic and such and holy water can have an effect if you are not invited. So is this an issue with the youth groups? Are the holy water and crosses an issue? I understand. What I love is I already know how they got into everywhere. That's the brilliant part. That one's easy. I know that they literally have access to every structure in that town because of their cover. But is it an issue internally with crosses and holy water? Does that ever come up?
I would imagine it probably would. I mean, you can't have a group of vampires masquerading as a youth group without having to address that. I haven't given a lot of thought to it, but I think what you just said right there is the easy answer, is that based on what the first movie set up, if a vampire is invited into the house, you no longer have any power over them.
Yeah.
So I think that would be the workaround.
Okay. I apologize, everyone. Sean's been my DM for a few games, and so I think I just realized I'm basically just asking him technical questions. Like, how many times can I use that spell real quick? So I'm sorry, really. I'm just asking DM questions. That's not helpful to your pitch.
No,
I love
that's
it.
quite all right.
So is it coming out of this? Is it a celebration? I love that we have the two generations. Are we going to get further adventures of Emma and the Frog Brothers' daughter? Are they the next generation of hunters now, or is this? Or
I mean, I think that would be a lot of fun.
Relax. Yeah.
I have no sequels planned at the moment, but clearly that would be what.
The next Zoom is the sequel to the sequel.
Yes.
The threequel.
I've only one more question.
Yes.
If the sequel is about David, will it be called Dr. Acula PhD?
If I were pitching to Adult Swim, then absolutely. Yes.
Thank you.
Pitch that to Adult Swim. I love it.
Thank you.
That's fantastic.
So, what are the Lost Girls' political demands?
Actually, I haven't thought that out. I mean, I would imagine that would be something that you would probably write closer to production to make it topical. But
Relevant.
Police, you mean?
Yeah, why aren't government services open at night? They have no access to them.
That's a very good question.
They're a targeted.
I like that. That's Michael's new superpower, is the power of like politics. He's like, I've got this. I've actually got this. I don't have to be a vampire to do this. This is the other thing. I became this.
Well, guys, thank you very much for listening to my pitch, and thank you for coming out and delivering your pitches for the Lost Girls. I want to thank each of you, and just real quick, if you have a place where people can reach you, where would that be?
You can reach me at my website, kelseywalmer.com, but I'm also online a lot. All of my Instagram handles, vampire fittingly, are Van Kelsing, VAN,
yes,
or KELSING.
Excellent.
That's amazing.
Thom?
I just visit those because that handle's incredible. Yeah, I mean, if you're looking to get in touch with me about any of this or whatever, thomnewell.com, THOM, because I spell it real cool. And the only social media that I'm really present on is Twitter, and you can just search Thom Newell. I'm one of the only ones. So.
All right. Okay. And Allison?
I am unreachable. I live in a sunken vampire hotel. Any inquiries can go through Sean Rourke.
Excellent. Okay. Very, very fair. Jack?
All of my social media is Flatline Jack, which was my screen name on AOL Vampire Chat. That is
nice legacy.
That was my Worlds of Darkness character, Vampire or Flatline Jack. That is 100% true.
All right. We'll get to the tattoo in a later episode. So those were our pitches for the Lost Girls, and obviously we would love to hear what you guys would do with the Lost Girls, and there's a place where you can tell us that, and that's down in the comments. We would love to hear it. In the meantime, thanks for being here. Have a good night. I hope you enjoyed our first little experiment in academic what if movie pitches. Before we go though, I just wanted to say a special thank you to Jack because he came over to my apartment the other day and gave me a gift, which is now hanging right behind me. It is a wonderful Lost Boys garland? Would you call it a garland? He got this off of Etsy, and it made me laugh immediately upon opening it. But it's just these wonderful depictions of the vampire characters from the Lost Boys hanging on a piece of black ribbon, much like they do off of the train bridge in the movie. And so I had to put this up, and I had to call it out. If this seems like the type of thing that you would want hanging around your house, you can get them on Etsy from a pair of makers called Material Gods. And so by all means, go grab some Lost Boys for yourself. So thank you, Jack, for bringing that over. And thank you also, Allison and Kelsey and Thom, for being on this episode. And thank all of you for watching. We'll see you next time.